Frederick Dally is a pioneer photographer in British Columbia. He was active between 1866 and 1870. He came to British Columbia in 1862 at the age of 24 and opened a shop as a merchant, and 4 years later changed his shingle to photographer in a small shop on Fort Street. I think the photographs are vitally important to BC's history because they've created an enduring vision of British Columbia. And it's a vision that began in colonial British Columbia, but has been the foundation of the myths and metaphors of the province's history. And they have been used in many different ways to tell many different stories. So I think what's interesting is to try to show how this enduring vision that persists can be traced back to one man in a 4-year span in colonial British Columbia. His personality comes through his images and comes through his activities. He was curious, he was adventuresome, he was gregarious.
And the photographs themselves, of course, speak a lot about the man, because you could have just set up a shop and made likenesses of people in Victoria. And of course he did lots of that, and that would help pay the bills. But you can tell by the geography covered and some of the ambitious photographs that he made on the way and in the gold fields. Certainly at a time when you were doing a lot of this on horseback and on foot and covering hundreds of miles and at personal expense.
Photography in 1866, when Frederick Dally took up the camera, was very different from photography today. The process was difficult, it was messy, it was time-consuming, the cameras were large, the equipment was heavy. And for him to get to outdoor locations required that he take a portable darkroom. So it was quite different. And I think that one has to understand that to really appreciate his photographs, that these are in no way snapshots. And then you start to realize that what's really significant is the amount of effort and time that was invested in acquiring a single negative. You know, we talk about all the time, oh, you know, technology's improved, but when you look at the detail in these, the wet plate process might have been difficult and messy and time-consuming, but it produced remarkably clear, detailed images. I mean, British Columbia has these magnificent landscapes. They're enormous in scale. And so when he photographs these landscapes, and then you realize that that's a pack train, or that's a person, you start to understand the scale of the place and how he's managed still to record the scene in an aesthetically pleasing way with a great deal of information to offer. The really exciting opportunity here is to see Dally as the source of this enduring vision of British Columbia. That's why it's familiar, but it's familiar in the sense of being illustration. And so it will be the center of attention rather than the background.